welcome back to the Female Dating Strategy, the meanest female-only podcast on the internet. I'm your host, Diana.
And I'm your host, Rose. And today we are having a discussion on something that is purely enjoyable in practice, but somewhat prickly in theory. What is that topic, Diana?
It is, why do women deserve hobbies? And why men are upset we have them? And why we shouldn't care that they're upset that we have them? Because they're not paying for them.
Oh no, men are upset? Oh, whatever shall we do? We must perish.
What's new?
Exactly.
If you told me men are happy, I'd be more worried.
Yeah, I was listening to all our listeners. We have several episodes out now that feature Diana and I as your new hosts, and I've been listening to them for purely scientific reasons, right, Diana? Just to make sure I'm doing things properly. And one of the things that I really picked up on that I didn't right away when we were talking was you had said, like, you will know you're doing something wrong if whatever you're doing makes a man happy and he agrees with it.
Yep. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm a little less honorable than you. I listen to some of these podcasts just because I like the sound of my own voice, because I get to have one, you know, and I feel like men have fought so hard for us to not have a voice in our own lives that honestly, I'm an incredibly smug woman. I relish the thought that I can just say whatever the hell I want and they can't take this away from me. So I feel like we should enjoy the time. I mean, of course, I also, deconstructed and see how I could do better. But no, I'm telling you, I actually really enjoy our discussions because, also it's kind of like, when you watch a TV show the first time, you don't really you enjoy it, but you don't necessarily pick up a lot of the smaller Easter eggs and things like that. When I look back at our own episodes, I'm like, oh my God, that was such a solid point. Because in that conversation, you just forget about it after a point. You're like, oh, that she said something so clever. Rose said something so clever. And it just like slipped me. And then I've listened to it again and I'm like, yeah, that's a really good point. Actually, now that you bring that to my attention, that was a really good point. So I think it's just nice to be able to go back and look back and be like, you know what? We're just really smart and we're just, not to toot our own horn, but we're very smart people.
Let's toot though. Let's toot them.
Toot toot.
You know what? I love your smugness. It's something that we are so discouraged from ever being smug. Like my very hateful father, I still remember him being like, you know what, Rose, you really should be modest. As in, there's not much to crow about, but I would be like, you're right, I should be more modest because I have so much that I should be modest about because it's too brilliant. We literally had this argument until he died. He was like, you're not that great. And I was like, you know what? I'm too great.
You know what? I believe in saving that humility for the Oscars and like the speeches to God and all of that other stuff. But like when it comes to, talking about myself and hyping, I live in an industry where everybody has to be a showman. Or people ignore you. And that's the tragedy of I think that the thing is women are encouraged to be wallflowers and to kind of not take up space. But, it's a disadvantage to you when you're moving through life, because if you look at the people who stand out the most and the people who advance the most in their career, they're people who have not only an accurate assessment of their skills and their flaws, but are quite open about talking about their success. And that's because it's coming from a state of pride in your accomplishments. I think a lot of people will shame you by saying, your confidence is arrogance and your pride in your accomplishments could do well with the dose of humility. But the truth is that those people were not there when you were struggling or working the long hours or studying or whatever it was, so it's very important to give yourself flowers, especially. Again, think of yourself as a garden that needs to be watered. We expect plants to thrive in an ecosystem where there's very little water. And it can't. When you are giving yourself that water, you're allowing yourself to grow. So I feel like it's very important and we always tell people, right, like self-validate, learn to, these things don't where do you think that comes from? How are you supposed to self-validate from relying on other people to be your source of validation?
Oof. These are some real truths right here. And I think this is why we wanted to talk about hobbies today, because hobbies are one way in which we do water ourselves. We do nourish and nurture and give ourselves our sole undivided attention in our own time. And I think that's why it is something that is so, what did we title this? Women's hobbies as an act of aggression.
Mm-hmm. When women's pleasure pains men. But to be fair, women do anything that pains men, so.
It's so true. But I think it's very accurate. And I think this is something that we don't really stop to think about. Why are they so vehemently opposed to us having any time and any enjoyment for ourselves. And it doesn't even cost them money. Why could that possibly bother them? What do we think we've discovered, Diana?
So, recently, I think I told you this as well, that I've been listening to the Audible book Mythos by Stephen Fry. Just to brush up on my Greek mythology. And let me just say that men have always been upset when women have hobbies that don't involve them. And this goes back to like all the way to ancient Greece. It's nothing new. It's not like this Victorian thing that came out. But I think for a very long time, man's pursuit of discipline and work was supposed to enhance his status in the eyes of other men. So men that cultivated hobbies, men who were good at a craft, especially when we moved from an agricultural society to an industrial one, those were considered really valuable traits in men because it basically signified that they were producing something of value to society. And this is where we have to bring in capitalism for a second, because the thing is, once capitalism became an entrenched system, there was really no room for you to cultivate that kind of activity on the side, because so much of your time was taken up in, working for a company or being a laborer of some kind, that honestly, if you had any energy to, do wood shop or work on an engine in your garage or something like that, that was a rare thing, right? And I think that as long as men were distracted and weren't really paying attention to women, they didn't really see women as a threat, because we go on to talk about this later on, but a lot of men see women as NPC characters, right? And for a very long time, a woman's only role in society was to reproduce and bear children and then be in charge of looking after those children. And the more children you have, the less likely you are to have time for hobbies. And a lot of women's hobbies really came out of stuff that they had to do for their children already, like embroidery or stitching, sewing, cooking. All of these things were things that were born out of necessity, not so much something that they did as a luxury activity, right? So then after women started entering the workforce and started making money as well, they kind of also for the first time had free time in a way that men did, which they didn't have before, because a lot of their time before was taken up by labor. Right? And men had no problem with that because it didn't actively interfere with their sense of ego. In fact, the more trades or skills your wife had, the better it looked for you, right? If you look at the advertising in the 1950s and the 60s, so much of when the refrigerator became a thing, or when these ginormous ass ovens became a thing, the whole point of these ads were to encourage women to reduce their labor. And that they were marketed towards stay-at-home moms, right? They were marketed with the intention of being cut down all this time you spend doing your laundry by putting it into this machine, or cut down the time that you spend, hanging up all these clothes by bringing this vacuum cleaner or whatever it is. You know what I mean? All of these household tasks were basically made efficient by the introduction of these machines. And I mean, there was a lot of resistance too. If you look at some of these interviews when some of these newfangled devices came on the scene, there were a lot of husbands being like, I don't know, I just think this is going to make my old Sheila suddenly, just not want to, all sorts, never thinking about the fact that, reducing the amount of labor that she had to do would probably make her more likely to be horny for you, because if she's exhausted, she's just doesn't have, where's the time to be horny? You know what I mean? I don't think men think things through. They're playing checkers at every level. Then they're so surprised that their wife is too tired. And they're like, my wife doesn't want to have sex with me. She keeps saying she has a headache. She's like, yes, she's been dealing with 4 kids and doing all of the household chores. Of course she's not interested, Bob.
Yeah, Bob, get a grip, Bob.
Get a grip. You know what I mean? So we may be the first or second generation that really did get to develop hobbies. Hobbies, the idea of a hobby is really the idea of having luxury time.
Yeah, leisure time as a luxury symbol. It really.
Yes. And the women that get to have hobbies, maybe back then, the women who got to play bridge and throw dinner parties were women whose husbands provided more money. And so it was kind of a status thing that she had the time to cultivate all of these other personalities, other things, because again, it reflected well on their husbands. So I think a lot of men saw women's hobbies as okay, well, it has to be an extension to me and it has to make me look good in some way. But then, as women started developing their own interests, then suddenly men were not that happy about it. And also, if you look at a lot of, women's contributions in traditionally masculine fields, scientific discovery and inventions and stuff like that, this is a big part of the reason why they're completely erased from the narrative as well, is because men are threatened if you pick traditionally feminine hobbies, and they're threatened when you pick traditionally masculine hobbies as well, because they think that all of your 24 hours should be reserved for them. And honestly, anytime you make them think about the fact that you're doing something else other than them, they're not very thrilled about it. So maybe that's it.
I do think it is. I think the aspect of time is something that's really under-examined in this sort of battle. Well, actually, it's not a battle of the sexes. It's a gender terrorism is what it is. Like this sort of, I've been reading a lot more, especially under the Trump and the MAGA rise of this movement about stochastic terrorism. Have you ever heard about this? It's a threat of, so for example, right now in Ohio, there is a sheriff who is telling all of his constituents, gather any of the names, numbers, and addresses of individuals who have signs to vote for Harris and Walz. And it's this implicit, it's an implied threat. And so this sort of idea, like, we're going to call in a bomb threat and get you swatted if you have a Harris and Walz sign in your yard. You don't know if it's going to come, but the threat is there. And so it's this idea of like, you're constantly under stress because you don't know if and when something you do is going to trigger basically these terrorists, these radicals.
Wow, that's wild. That's wild.
It is wild. It's been happening increasingly under Trump. And now that we're in the lead up to the election, they're really ramping it up as well. So
it sounds like men could use a hobby.
Men, get a fucking hobby that's not terrorizing women.
I mean, honestly, before they get a hobby, they should probably get a job. I mean, they don't even have that right now. So let's start with a job and then...
Hello. Go take a shower and wash your ass while you're at it.
Okay, just to go on a brief aside, can we talk about the fact that, like, we have a generation of men that have to be called on to wash their assholes, and then you have these, like, elaborate bathroom routines for women where they have, like, 5 different kinds of, like, sugar scrub from, like, that shea tree. What is that? Moisture tree. There's, like, this tree brand. I can't even remember. Tree Hut? I don't know what it's called. But I've seen this brand, like, everywhere on, like, people's bath routines. And all I get recommended now are bath routines because I am honestly flummoxed that anybody would need these many things to get clean with. So you have like this huge spectrum where like women are like consuming these products at such a mass scale and men are being reminded, hey, have you thought about washing your asshole today? Like, where are we? Such a great divide.
The actual great divide. It is wild. Actually, and now, I'm a lover of YouTube, so I love to like listen to YouTube videos. And so many of them are YouTubers who will stitch together I don't know if it's like people from Instagram or TikTok or what have you. But since I really do try to limit my social media, I like that they're pulling in other social media people for me to hear without me having to go seek them out and like try to figure out the algorithm. So one of the things that's been popping up on my YouTube now is like strippers advising women on female hygiene and how to be the most appealing and clean. And I'm like, you know what? Yes, I will listen to a stripper tell me on how I should be clean because I cannot imagine the sort of lengths they go to for their work. Honestly, I actually already did most of what they recommend. The one thing is I don't believe in being clean shaven. First of all, I'm not actually a really hairy person, so I sort of come from that place of privilege where like I really don't have much like hair to start with. But I also like push back against always having to have a Brazilian or all this bullshit that like, listen, hair is there for a reason.
Yeah. No, the other thing I would say is that some of them encourage douching and like, just washing your privates with soap and stuff. And like, it gives you a high risk of a UTI. Like for any woman here, like not that I'm a vaginal expert or anything. I mean, I possess one, but like, I don't think that that I don't know that makes me an expert.
I venture to say that I am because I've gone seeking out this. I've gone out to seek this information from OBGYNs and others because, like you say, there's really not a lot of actual factual information out there that's correct. So I wanted to be sure that I was doing everything correctly. And these strippers are not recommending douching. That's another reason why I'm like, they know what they're talking about because they're not talking about douching.
Oh, that's good. That's good because I did see one. Because I did see one person who was like, scrub with a loofah. And I was like, no, don't do that.
No!
Also, I will say with any person that you're getting this kind of advice from, like, just pick and choose. I think a lot of people think I have to adopt everything wholesale. Like, oh, this person has like a killer wing liner look. Like, I have to buy the exact product that they have. Like, no, just be careful that even with YouTubers, you are being marketed to. I think a lot of people forget that because like everything has become content now. So everyone thinks that, oh, I need to have like the La Creuset pot like Nara Smith does so that I can make bubble gum for whatever reason. Like, you know what I mean?
It's true. Yes. Like, well, this is what we've talked about before too, right? Haven't we? Media literacy. and making sure we understand,
Yeah.
right, who is being marketed, who is the audience, who is the public, and to what end is this being directed at, right? So absolutely agree with you. But where was I going with this? We were talking about time, we were talking about hobbies, hygiene.
Well, you know what? Let me bring it back to one of these points just so that we could keep it going from here. So we brought up this point to start with about women's interest as acts of aggression. So one of the things I think is that, when we talk about like the psychology of men being opposed to women doing things that are not designed for them, I think part of the reason that men get upset is because for a very long time, I think a lot of people also feel this guilt with capitalism. I think that, even I felt this, like I really like watercolor painting, for example. And I remembered feeling like, oh, I need to be really good at this because capitalism convinces you that you have to monetize like everything, every hobby you have. And so everything is connected to being productive, right? I think that a lot of the hobbies that women enjoyed for the first time were being done without the intention of monetization. And I think that was one of the things that men originally, I don't know where they get off on coming from this because these guys who play video games, I don't know what cultural capital they're adding to our world by sitting in front of a screen and with like a joystick doing shit. But like they were shitting a lot on the fact that women don't have traditional hobbies like cooking and wearing aprons and, whatever. But you know what I mean? Because for them, it's about like sexual fantasy. It's like, oh, she should be making things for me. That's like the undertone, right? It's like they package it under, oh, it's not productive for capitalism. And like, they do this even with gamer women. For example, like I'm a huge fan of The Sims and I've been playing, this is probably the only video game I've played since like 2003. Like this is my longest relationship yet, And I like it because it really helps me with visualization. I have elaborate storylines and it's like, I went from playing dolls to playing this. And like, I really like the design element of it, like designing homes, designing interiors. Like, in fact, when I bought my home this year, a lot of the interiors that I designed, I already designed on The Sims. So when I went in to show my interior guy what I wanted it to look like, I got the floor plans from him and placed the floor plans in my Sims game and then did the interiors to give him like a mock-up of like what I wanted it to look like.
Oh my gosh, that's so clever.
Yeah, because it was the easiest way to get the message across. But, even women who are like, they had like this huge thing called Gamergate a few years ago where like they basically tried to oust women from the gaming community, right? So even women who take up traditionally masculine hobbies are bullied a lot by men for having those hobbies and for not being real, hobbyists of that hobby or whatever. So, and like it's the same thing with Sims. They were like, oh, these people are not real gamers. So as we go on to prove, it's like it doesn't really matter whether you have a traditionally feminine or traditionally masculine hobby. It's the fact that they feel that the hobby should be in advancement of pleasing them in some way, that you're doing this for them in some way. So yeah, and they couch it under like, oh well, she's just not being productive, she's lazy and wasting her time. But it's like a hobby is what is a hobby supposed to be? A hobby is supposed to be something you do for enjoyment, not for the purpose of monetization. And I think this is why a lot of people get stressed when they have hobbies or when they don't have hobbies, because they're like, oh no, but I need to make this my secondary income. I need to have multiple income streams and I need to monetize this and put my shit on Etsy. Like, no, you don't. You can be bad at it.
Damn you, capitalism. I absolutely agree with you. I think I have a half-baked inchoate theory around the time-space continuum as it applies to women's hobbies and men's anger. And basically, it's interchangeable, time and or space. It doesn't matter if you're taking up space. It doesn't matter how much time. Anything that's on the time-space continuum that is not exclusively and solely for their benefit is an affront. And that's what I think we women have to really start understanding. It's like, it doesn't matter how masculine coded or how much money you could potentially derive from this. Unless he's getting direct benefit from him, he views it as an affront. And so one thing that you really brought up that I appreciate so much, damn you, capitalism. Not everything has to be about productivity. Not everything has to be about money. Hobbies are literally a pastime. They're a way for you to enjoy the passage of time doing something that brings you joy. And by forgetting this, by thinking that we always have to be on some sort of never-ending, what is a gerbil always walking on?
The hamster wheel?
The hamster wheel, thank you. Like we're supposed to be on some never-ending hamster wheel of productivity and income generation. That is not what we were born to do. Again, I love this Native American idea that like we were born to be as nature is, of the world. in and of the world, in and of just our own life is its own reason for being. There is nothing else that we're meant to be doing. Everything else is simply a construct. And this is something like, I'm somebody who has a million hobbies because it's my way of pushing back against, I had a very overbearing, remember the hateful father. And he was absolutely, unless I was like bringing in money and being super productive and coming home exhausted after a 14-hour workday, he had nothing to say to me. And so I was brought up like hyper capitalist, hyper productive. And then throughout my 20s and 30s, I gradually, was coming to radical feminism. I was reading Marx. I was reading critiques of neoliberalism. And this is one of the ways in which I push back. And it's my own private revolution of like reclaiming my life, reclaiming my time and the space I occupy. So I have a million hobbies and pastimes. I love them all. I've also really struggled. It's been a good exercise for me in learning to not have to be good at something in order to enjoy it. That's been really radical for me because I come from this very perfectionist background. So I come from like a concert pianist background. That was my upbringing and my training. And as you know, if you're a classical pianist, like perfection is the name of the game. And so it's just countless, it's thousands of hours in order to ensure like this one trill is just right. Right. And that had really serious drawbacks and disadvantages to my well-being, to my health and my well-being. And so as I've gotten older, it's like, what can I do that has absolutely no benefit to anybody but myself, that has no end in and of itself, but that really is just pleasing to me? So here's an example. I love walking without purpose or end. I just want to go for a walk. And people are like, what? But like, oh, you're walking, you're like, you've got like a mileage that you want to cover, or like you're trying to cover, so many miles with so much time, or like you've got a goal of how many I'm like, no, I have absolutely no goal. I go out, I walk until I want to walk back home, and then I walk back home, and that's it. And I just want to look at the flowers and like pet a cute dog and breathe deeply and watch the trees. And then I go home and I just feel really good because I was out in nature. That's it. And that's radical to people today. And I just think that's how far afield we've come in our world, in our culture, that like taking a walk for a walk's sake is something that people look at askance, like what? And I don't even bring my phone with me. And people are like, how can you go for a walk without your phone? What do you mean? How can I go for a walk without my phone? People have been walking for thousands of years without phones. Okay. I don't need a phone to take a walk.
I will say though, that society has always had a problem with women having hobbies. We talked about like this Elle Woods effect, right? About how people will belittle women for, being traditionally feminine, even though that's the expectation that they have from women in society as well. Like women are shamed for being tomboys, and then they're shamed for being girly girls. If you look at the media is littered with things like this. I remember when I watched Beauty and the Beast as a kid, Gaston, like the main rival, like the main, nemesis.
The villain,
yeah. I was like, the nemesis. I remember he points out that Belle reads books, and he's like, oh, when women read books, they get ideas. And that was the whole point. That was the whole point, right? Like women, that was the reason why women were systematically kept from being educated, is because they knew that if women read books, they'd have access to knowledge that men didn't feel like they should have. And that was why, women who read books in like the Victorian era, Regency era, or whatever, were considered like these like vile spinsters. Like Jane Austen had to publish under like a secret identity because she, it was not befitting of a woman of her station to be public about the fact that she was writing these novels about her social class, and so they were very intentional about the fact that book reading was really for the aesthetic, and it was really for an indication of upper breeding, but you weren't actually supposed to use any of the ideas you got from books to challenge men's authority in any way, which is why even now I've noticed that, when I read I've never been more approached by men than when I have a book in my hand. Like, I clearly don't want to talk to you. So why are you there could not be a bigger indicator other than big honking headphones that I do not want to talk to you. But it's because men read books, like the modern men read books for the aesthetic. This is why you'll find like a random guy out on the street with like a Bell Hooks novel in his hand, because he's not reading that book. He wants you to think he's reading that book. They project a lot of what they they project their own behaviors on women and assume that women have hobbies to sexually entice men.
Yeah, because again, if it's not about them, it doesn't exist.
Yep, and men also have gone to ridiculous extremes in order to made to basically keep women sheltered and naive. Really, the development of hobbies for men is seen as a threat because they see women developing these hobbies as an extension of their personality. And if a woman develops her personality and her intellect, she may not be interested in him. So part of it is to keep her intellectually naive and guarded so that she sees him as more of an authority figure for his intellect. And I can think actively of like the foot binding in China that happened way back when. I remember it was in Andrea Dworkin's book that they had interviewed a woman. I don't know where I think it was Andrea Dworkin's book at least, but she had mentioned that a woman who had her foot bound like when she was a little kid, the rationale back in those days was that if you did that, it would affect the pelvis in some way and make it like more sexually pleasing for men. But obviously that was bullshit because there was no indication that it did anything like that. It did change like the structure of pelvis, but obviously it was because you weren't putting your weight on your heel anymore, right? But the real reason was because these women had to be lifted around everywhere by the men in their lives, and it allowed those men to feel like big men because now they had to lift their wife, their dainty wife, and they got to feel like a guy. The other aspect of it that a lot of men admitted to was the fact that because she physically can't leave the house, because she can't run, she can't go anywhere, yeah, she literally can't go and seek knowledge elsewhere. So she has to trust his word on what the world is like. She has to trust his word when he goes out to his work, whatever his work is, and he comes back and tells her, I was in a room full of men and they all respected me and they all applauded me because I said this, this, this. She has to take her word for it, and she's going to sit there and applaud because she literally can't run. She can't run. So she has to take his word for how impressive he is, and it allows him to feel like an authority. This is how far men are willing to go to prevent you from being able to have your own mind.
They want a captive audience.
Yep. Being, they talk about like, it's like the like basically they want to have full ownership over your mind. And having a hobby means that you're cultivating interests that may not align with his interests. Also, it puts you in contact with other people, right? For example, men are not that eager for women to be weightlifting, not because of the stupid bullshit reason of she'll bulk up and start looking like a man, but because traditionally weightlifting would have a lot more men. And so she's more likely to find another partner at the gym.
I mean, it's so terrifying. You're absolutely right. And it's terrifying because I shy away from really acknowledging this full truth, which is men want complete and utter ownership over our minds. It's bad enough that they want it over our bodies, but our own minds. I mean, it's a slave mentality that is so degenerate, that is so depraved. Like my happy-go-lucky self really hates to think about it, how true it is. But what you were talking about led to my mind this quote from one of literature's most infamous villains, Judge Holden, from Cormac McCarthy's Blood Meridian. And this is a very famous quote of his from the book. I don't recommend people read this book. I do like Cormac McCarthy's writing, but this book is really fucking disturbing. And I think it is because he really goes into sort of the depths of depravity and injustice that men mete out amongst themselves and in the world. So what Judge Holden says is this, quote, "Whatever in creation exists without my knowledge exists without my consent." I really think this encapsulates Cormac McCarthy's philosophy on who men really are. Whatever in creation exists without my knowledge exists without my consent. In other words, any part of you that is not subject and beholden to them exists without their consent. Nothing is more egregious in their eyes. And so this is why I want women to have hobbies. I'm like, get all the fucking hobbies in the world, because every step you make toward a hobby is a step away from the tyranny of man. I think that's what I want our takeaway to be from this episode, Diana.
Exactly. And I mean, the other thing is, when you look at these hobbies that men ascribe as like traditionally feminine, right? First of all, like all these men who suddenly adopted cooking were chefs, but like the women, all these women who are doing it every single day, they're just fulfilling their duty, right? Like they're not chefs, they're just homemakers or whatever. Like they're not even given a real title. They're like, oh, this is your job, just go and make sure the meal is ready, make me a sandwich or whatever, right? One of the things I want to talk about, not really a hobby, but just an interest, like because men get angry even at certain interests that women have, like astrology, right? who is astrology hurting? One of the things, when I started getting into astrology, more than anything, just because, again, even with Greek mythology, it's very interesting to see how the Greek myths influenced modern astrology, especially Western astrology. I remembered that, one of the tests I used to give men on these dating apps is just bring up some random astrology thing. And if they got crazy unhinged, like angry about it, I knew it was a ginormous red flag, because it is the one like trove of knowledge that they don't have access to, that they like. And let's be real, men play like fantasy football. Like, you're fantasizing about a fake fucking team and you're angry at me because I look at some stars. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we all have like stupid beliefs. You believe in like a random sky daddy who like arbitrates justice from the heavens. Like, I'm not making fun of you for having ridiculous beliefs, right? But it's like their ridiculous beliefs have more validity than yours. And so, they just get angry at women for having these hobbies that, again, don't center them, right? Like, I don't even have any beef with any of the other zodiacs, by the way, but just to like piss people off, I'm like, oh, you're a Gemini. Like, I don't even believe in this shit, but I just say it, you know what I mean? Because I know it annoys them. And I test for annoyance. I test for how easy he is to anger and annoy. And they almost always fall for it, because how eager is he to learn about information that is not his own information? How eager is he to learn about knowledge that is not his own knowledge? Like, astrology in my culture is like a big part of the culture. Okay. I think some of these people go to the wrong astrologers that fearmonger because they're gullible. I'm not going to lie. But I also feel like when any spiritual practice is a tool for you to tap into your wants and needs, if it helps you and it's not hurting anyone, like there's no animal sacrifice, there's no ritualistic human shit, you're fine. Okay. Just do you.
That's the thing too. It's like, it's a two-headed coin, because of course astrology is so awful, but psychology was taken over by men. But what is astrology if not like the precursor to psychology?
But I mean, even looking at psychology, right? Psychology for the longest time was a field that was dominated by men. And look at what men did with psychology under the guise of science. They lobotomized women. Okay? And everyone thought that was perfectly okay. Like, back in the day when you had to fake a migraine to not have sex with your husband, they used to send you to an asylum because they thought you were crazy for not wanting to sleep with him. That was considered a perfectly good, dose of like a diagnosis for a mental illness back then. The number, like, my personal belief is nobody should ever date a Kennedy, because that family curse that they have from what they did to Rosalind,
they are evil.
Yeah, but I mean, men have done horrific things using science as a weapon.
Absolutely. Actually, this is why the Kennedys have killed women with every generation of their men, whether it's the girlfriend or the wife or the sister of their wife or their own sister. Women have always died around the Kennedy men. Do not date them. And do not marry them.
Yeah. And I mean, I think in terms of like, what is the worst hobby you could possibly have? I honestly think that like these kinds of hobbies like astrology or tarot, again, they're predominantly taken over by women. And I think a big part of the reason why men hate them is just because they're taken over by women, which is weird, because like, if you look at cultures like in India and stuff, like most of the astrologers are men. And most of the high-powered CEOs, like even in the States, from what I remember, like a lot of politicians, a lot of really higher-up politicians hire astrologers. So men do use it at a certain level, but when they use it, it makes sense for them because there's a strategy. When we use it, it's like some frivolous bullshit.
Right. And so this is, I think, a really good point, is that unless it's something where we are going to them as supplicants, they want no part of it. I still remember, so I'm a sort of self-taught autodidactic person in things beyond just piano. So I love the arts in general. I love history. I love literature. And I'm a speed reader. So I really have sort of a voracious depth and breadth to the material that I look at, because I'm able to get through so much so quickly. And I'll never forget how many times I've been on dates or, sort of like in the early courtship rituals of getting to know one another. And anytime I bring like a guy who says he's a cinemaphile, or a guy who's like, oh yeah, I'm really into rock and roll. Well, guess what? I know a ton of shit about that. So whenever I start to actually like offer up my own thoughts, I can just see his face and body language shutting down in real time. Like, he is so upset that I know that I'm not there to be taught by him about Led Zeppelin, but rather I actually know shit about Led Zeppelin that he doesn't even know.
When they want to share hobbies with you, it's so they can monologue at you for like an hour straight.
Exactly. And I always refuse, but that was me being very naive. I was like, oh, he must be, I bet he's really going to enjoy that we share this in common. And he'll be impressed by how much I know about it because of the depths of my passion. No, wrong. Like never got that date after that, which again, I love your idea of like shit testing for how quickly they are to annoyance. And how quickly they are to shut down.
I'm telling you, even if you don't believe in astrology, like please, women, you can use this strategy, because even before I started like reading, or like I started reading my own charts and stuff for fun, right? I do this for my friends as well. I just do it as like a fun party trick. But like I have a friend who's into tarot. We do it for each other. But obviously we don't make all of our major life decisions just based on this alone. Like we there's a lot of other factors. We just do this as a side thing. But I will say that even if you don't believe in it, just use it. I think what was it called? The blood in the water test. We used to have this in the forum as well, where I think it used to be about like feed him a fake insecurity and see if he uses it against you in future. But I will say that my number one thing is to see how easily they get annoyed by what they consider a frivolous, girly interest, like astrology or Barbie. Or like, just think of the girliest thing you can think of, and then just like go ape shit and talk about it. And if he gets angry and he's like,
boy band.
Yeah, boy band, whatever it is, invent something. You know what I got so annoyed by when this year, when like what was that movie called? It was Deadpool. When Deadpool came out, all these men doing the bye 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 dance. And when I was a kid and we used to listen to NSYNC and we were doing the bye 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 dance, how annoying were they about telling us how stupid we were for liking all of those guys? And now they're sitting and doing that shit and be like, oh my God, millennials, so much fun.
Basically, we are the arbiters of taste, and they hate that.
They really, honestly, they really don't like something. Like they want to be the ones who get to say that something is cool. When we like it, it's corny. When they like it, it's cool, right? So astrology in the hands of us is some frivolous, girly bullshit, and astrology in the hands of them is a science. It's a practical study of the constellations, So they have to make everything. If we have girl math, they have like boy arts or whatever.
Oh my God, I know. Gosh, it's so true. Like, how are you gendering maths? Okay, it's numbers. And this is something I find really interesting, because either they must be the kings of the castle with like tech and STEM and things like that, or on the flip side, they're the new NEETs. Like, they're not in education. They're not in what does NEET stand for again, Diana?
Never educated, employed, or trained. I think that might be I think that might be it.
Yep, they're like basically shut-ins with their video games. And, I thought it was so funny that you mentioned video games, because I grew up with two older brothers who had the video games and who absolutely never allowed me to play with them, and who took over the TV for basically my entire childhood and adolescence until they moved out, because I was the youngest. And what that did was it actually led me to really develop my own hobbies, because we lived out in the countryside. I didn't have any friends to play with. So it was like, well, my brothers have the TV and the video games. What am I going to do to occupy myself? So it was like, I'm going to go play piano. I'm going to go for walks out in the woods. I'm going to read these books that my dad has on the shelf about like the Third Reich, because the library was miles and miles away and I had no access to it. And so the shit I was doing was like, I have to occupy my time, pastimes. I have to pass my time with something that like helps me avoid total insanity from like being cooped up in the middle of the country with nothing to do. And this is where, again, I want women to push back, because taking time for yourself is still a radical act in this day and age. And I would argue it's one that is really fundamental to reclaiming our status as like whole and fully realized human beings, separate and apart from our jobs as women, as friends, as girlfriends, as daughters. Like, we have so many roles. We have so many roles that were enforced upon us. Like, we're forced into compliance, and we're trained and inculcated and propagandized to such an extent that we embrace them and we think it's like what we're meant to be, and it's our life's purpose. I mean, I'll tell you, I was the most dutiful daughter that ever daughtered, right? Because that's what I thought. That's what the church told me. That's what society told me. That's what my family told me. And that actually led to the detriment of my own life, because it led me away from the hobbies and also the work I could have done to set myself up more financially. But I'm taking it back at this point, and I've never been happier. And so now that I have my own home and I live in it alone, and I live in a major city, and I'm doing very well financially, I mean, my friends are always like, well, what are you up to? I'm like, nothing. They're like, what'd you do this weekend? I'm like, I rested. They're like, oh man, must be nice. And I'm like, yes, it's the best. It's literally the best because I'm living my life solely for myself. And I tell you, sometimes I almost get drunk on that sensation of like, wow, my life is completely my own. I have to hold myself accountable to none. And I know this might not feel, to so many of the people who listen to Female Dating Strategy, it might feel completely unrealistic. If you have an ailing parent, if you have a chronic condition, if you have children, especially children with special needs, like this might all sound completely alien to you. But what I really want to, what I want to get at is that this idea of having something solely for yourself is what every human being owes themselves. You are owed this. Your time on this earth it's a lifetime, but we don't know how long that lifetime is going to be. In fact, today is the 5-year anniversary of my mom's death from cancer at 79. She is the only person in her entire family ever to die from cancer and to die before she reached her 90s. Everybody else in her entire family line makes it to at least 94. And she died at 79. And I do think it's because our family sucked her dry. The hateful father and her children, her ungrateful children, took until she literally collapsed from exhaustion and died from cancer. And this is something I don't want for any of us. My other beautiful best friend, Natalie, died from cancer at 23. She had just turned 23 a month prior. This is also the anniversary of her death. And this is on my thoughts right now, Diana, and thank you for letting me sort of go into this aside, because it's not just me being frivolous when I say you should go out and enjoy yourself. This is what your one brief and precious life. It's like, no, my most beloved women who have been so instrumental to my growth and development, they died prematurely, probably because they let life take from them and they didn't take enough for themselves. And none of this is guaranteed. If there's a message we should all get is that, like, you need to enjoy your life.
And you know what? If you are a woman that has the privilege of time, please just don't squander it, because there are working class women who have to work, who do not get that time to cultivate those interests. I really appreciated my parents when I was a kid, that they never divided things into like a gendered way of hobbying. They weren't like, this is girl hobbies and these are boy hobbies. When I was a kid, I was very into hiking and rock climbing. I loved animals. I probably did every survivalist thing you could imagine. I can navigate on land, I can navigate on water, I can sail, I can scuba dive. I was an archer. I was a really good archer, and I was a very good shot as well. Like, I was really good with guns. My dad took me to a clay pigeon place once, and like I got to do a lot of these really traditionally masculine hobbies. And my dad never made me feel like less of a girl for liking those things. He always divided it as like outside time and inside time. So he's like, yes, inside time has to be with books or playing a Lego set or doing something that's inside. Sometimes we play video games together, like car racing games, or I did I recreated Girls Just Want to Have Fun, and he was like my music video person, and so we had to like recreate all the scenes. And like I really like that my dad really went full in on like the girl dad stuff. Like he really enjoyed that, and I honestly think that when you look for partners, you should really look at someone who really embraces the fact that they get to enjoy these hobbies with you. That may not be the kinds of hobbies they get to enjoy with other men, just because it's fun and just because it's something new to do. We cooked like new recipes together. We shot like little music videos together. He taught me a lot of stuff about photography. I did a lot of like hobbies of music. Like I learned how to play the piano. I took singing lessons. I did gymnastics. And I remember like the funniest thing, one of the dates I had when I lived out in LA, like the guy took me to like, not a shoot, he took me to one of those like fairs where, like they have like the little balloons and they give you like those little rifle things and you get to like shoot like 6 balloons in a row. He was a terrible shot, okay? And I think he was just trying to do it to like show me what like a big man he was. And like I shot like 6 in a row and just looked at him, and the fear in his eyes, I have to say, was very satisfying. Because honestly, I could have been one of those girls in the Olympics, like you saw that guy who just none of the gear and just like shot, like that is me.
Yeah, the guy from Turkey. Yeah.
now I'm a really good shot. And that's why I tell people, I'm like, if you're at the end of my gun, I just have to say, if you pray to a God, you better start. So
I love that. I love that he classified it as inside and outside time. And I guess that's what I would also encourage women, because, here's the thing is so many of our hobbies are homebound. They're domestic. And there's a good reason for that. Like every time we step out our front door, nothing is assured as far as our safety is concerned. But I think hobbies are one way in which we can start to sort of exercise that tentative freedom to be out and about in the world.
exactly. And it's for your mental and physical development as well. Like part of the outside time was, take time to get in touch with nature, go hiking, go rock climbing, go fishing, or go playing like badminton, tennis, whatever it is, something outdoors that gets your blood pumping. And then inside you can do like the reading or the sewing or whatever. Like I never traditionally liked all of these things that they pushed on women. Like we had home economics as a kid, and I really hated embroidery, sewing, and knitting. And my mom was great at all this stuff. Like she really enjoyed, she's very, very creative, my mom. And actually my dad's very creative as well. But like, I just really like that they pushed me in all avenues, and they were like, you just don't have to be good at this. You can just switch. I think the only thing my dad never let me drop was combat training. Like when I took, like this Indian martial arts, like I wanted to drop out because it was so painful to do. And the drills were so hard. And he was like, yeah, I've let you drop out of everything except this. And I was so angry with him, because he just wouldn't let me drop out of it. And he's like, this is not compromise. Like I cannot compromise on you not knowing how to defend yourself. This is the only class I will ever insist that you take and like see all the way through, because, you develop those like memories in your muscle, right? When somebody attacks you or tries to fight you, like it's really important for women to know some amount of self-defense, I think. And so he just wouldn't let me quit. I was so mad at him at the time, but in hindsight, I'm very grateful to him. And I'm also glad that he like nurtured these things that were like, maybe other people would have thought was improper for me to be into as well, like archery and stuff, because I really did love archery. I really thought I was a little Athena out at war back when I was a kid.
Yes, I love that image. Oh my gosh, that's so precious. I want to okay, so one of my goals for FDS is that we start t-shirts. Okay, it's one of my private obsessions. It's not all my friends know, because I'm always like, when we have a fun or we have like a pithy expression that just comes out, I'm like, put that on a t-shirt. So for example, one little t-shirt that I want to do is from a quote of yours. I'm going around quoting you all the time, Diana. I support women's rights and I support women's wrongs. I am just enamored with this expression, and I think we need to have an FDS t-shirt with that.
I wish I could say it was my quote. I definitely probably saw it on the internet somewhere. I just think I'm a very good salesman. Like I have a friend who has like an Instagram story of just like all of my quotes, because I just drop them. Okay, I'm just a zinger.
See, we're zinger queens. Maybe that's how we got to these positions, these vaunted positions of FDS hosts.
I think, see, honestly, honor those things. Like, honor your natural instincts. And also, do not be with people who belittle your interests. It really just comes down to that as well, right? Like, when I was a kid, my dad never made me feel stupid for liking traditionally girly things. Like, I was despite all these interests, I was a very girly girl. Like, I used to hike a lot at school, and I used to go on nature trails and stuff, because I really loved wild animals and I just loved nature. But I also liked dressing up, and I was very into makeup, and like I used to do the My Scene Barbie dress up thing on on the internet. I grew up in the age of Club Penguin and Neopets, so like I definitely had like a very online identity and also a very offline identity. So yeah, maybe it's not inside outside, maybe it's online and offline, but whatever it is, get offline, and like don't let men keep you out of their spaces, because men are really happy about the fact that we're spending a lot more time indoors, out of fear of not going outside. Like, go outside, mingle, do those things, because you've earned that right. And there were a lot of women that fought for you to have that right. And there's still a lot of women now that don't leave, doing things for hobbies. Like, look at these women in Afghanistan. They're not even allowed to go to school. They're not allowed to leave their house. They're not allowed to leave the country. Like, there are women out there who don't have even an ounce of the.
They're not allowed to sing. They're not allowed to sing, which is like, how that to me is the ultimate tragedy right there. Like, how cruel can you be? And so if anything, like, think about this as like doing it for our sisters. If you have a hard time doing things for yourself because you're still outgrowing that conditioning that like would have you self-efface and deny and have the sort of self-abnegation at every turn because we are meant to live for others. If that's something that's really deeply inculcated in you, especially if here in the US, like you're coming from a religious fundamentalist background, think about it as like an act, a proxy act for our sisters in Iran and Afghanistan and Saudi Arabia and Qatar, etc., who are by law disbarred from any of these activities.
And also, a lot of people have been talking about like just the rise of loneliness. And, I think I've said this in earlier episodes as well. I think a big part of why people feel a lot lonelier is because you can't substitute for in-person connection. And no amount of TikToking and Redditing is going to replace the fact that sometimes you just need to have human interaction. And so hobbies are a great place to meet like-minded people because at the very least you share this hobby with them. We're not saying try to find a bestie at every hangout. But it's okay to go to a pottery class or go to like a dinner club or supper club or like a foodies night or like a walking tour or a bike trail or something with people. Like these activities are very important and they're important to meet other people as well. And honestly, people are always like, well, people brought this up as well as like, oh, what do we do now? Like everybody meets off the dating apps. There are still places where you can meet people and meet men specifically in hobbies. Like obviously you probably might not find you might find some gay men in knitting club. I will say that because I have seen a lot of gay men pull out a mean knit, but you might find more men in like hobbies that traditionally attract a lot more of the more disciplined men, like woodshop or weightlifting.
Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I was taking those classes and I was the only woman. And not that it was an uncomfortable sensation because they were all very respectful. In fact, I was afforded a lot of respect.
Yeah. You know what I've noticed? Have you noticed? Okay, speaking about inside outside, right? I this is just an observation I've made. I feel like a lot more men who have inside hobbies, i.e., coding, tech, like video games, they tend to be more hostile because it encourages like a level of being very antisocial, and like all these like tech bros and like these video game guys are just so like they're desperate for not even I wouldn't even say human connection. They're desperate for connection with women, but they absolutely resent them when they're in their spaces, especially like really good gamers and stuff like that. But I've noticed that men who have hobbies that like need a lot more discipline, i.e., and they'll arguing about discipline and be like, oh well, did you know how long it took to get an elf sword at the 2000 level in Dungeons and Dragons or whatever it is? I'm like, I don't know, man. Like it's imaginary.
I don't know what I don't care.
I don't know what imaginary toll you had to pay in order to get to that level. But I assume it was a lot, But with like the people who have stuff that you have to do with your hands, like woodshop or the things where you have to build things where you have to construct things where you have to like put like an actual tension or weight to your body. Like I find that those men tend to be a little bit more disciplined and like probably a little bit more better socialized. I don't know if this is just like I don't know if you support this perception or this hypothesis, but
yeah. No, I think it's true because I think you're right. I think it's related to this offline online. I think online is such a radicalized environment as far as like far right, incel, man's rights, manosphere kind of thing. So any man who is like almost exclusively online, he can't help. Even if he doesn't realize it, he can't help but be radicalized because that's the algorithm for them. Okay. It's it for all of us, but especially for them, right? It targets them specifically. If you are offline, if you are somebody who likes to tinker with bicycles or to, like, as you say, do woodworking or to be in a martial arts sort of environment, like these are men who are socialized because the outside world is a social world. That's where the socialization happens.
yeah, like I took a lot of Pilates, and that tends to skew a lot of women. Every now and then you get a guy who's like, this is bullshit, and then is like shaking at the end of the class because he realizes that shit is hard. But I mean, I had this perception of like a lot of the gym bros being actively hostile, horrible men. But in my experience, they tend to be a little bit more disciplined and focused on their goals, and they're quite encouraging of you achieving your goals in general. Like I found them to be a lot less hostile than my online spaces, like where in a lot of games, like big part of why I don't play multiplayer games or like all of those like COD and stuff. Like I like to play these isolated games or games of strategy. And even the games of strategy, they get so annoyed at me when I can beat them. And I'm like, this is my thing. Okay. You cannot beat me at my thing. But in the games that I've played with them, like lots of women I know have disguised their voices or just not spoken on camera because you just attract so much bullshit from them when they know that you're a girl. So, but I never noticed that when I went to like the gym and stuff, I mean, I don't know if it's just they are in person, they're a lot more quiet about their misogyny.
Even if they're quiet about it, at least they know how to behave appropriately. I'll take that. I will take that. And this is something else you're talking about. So anthropologists refer to this as weak ties and strong ties. Like community has to have So community is comprised of all sorts of people. If you're a part of a family unit, those are your strong ties. Those are the people who are like in your immediate orbit. You're gonna answer their call in the middle of the night. If they're stranded on a highway, like you're hopping in your car at 3 a.m. to go get them. Strong ties also include like your best friends, your aunts and uncles, people who are part of your immediate orbit who you count on and love dearly. Those are your strong ties. And then ties get weaker and weaker the farther out you get. So like your grocer or your cobbler or the seamstress who fixes the hem in your pants, these are weak ties, but you're still tied to them. They're still people who are part of your orbit. They matter to you. And these weak ties are often, anthropologists will talk about how weak ties are really underappreciated because these are the threads that make up the skein of community and togetherness. We don't all have to be best friends. We don't all have to be sharing our deepest and darkest thoughts with one another, but having a pleasant conversation when you're at the checkout line, or asking about somebody's vacation plans when you're there to pick up your laundry. Like all of this builds up and adds up to a satisfying and healthy social life. And I think that's where a lot of us have gone wrong. We've forgotten that like just the art of small talk. People are like, oh, I hate small talk. Small talk is literally the building blocks of intimacy. Okay?
It is the glue that holds society down.
Boom. Period.
And also, if you can't handle small talk, how are you going to handle big talk? Okay. You really think if you can't even do like the small social bare minimum of like asking someone how their day is, you're going to be able to sit with them and have like a real heart to heart? Like people want to bypass the work it takes to have intimate relationships and then immediately trauma dump on the first person nearby about how their boyfriend is cheating on them and their dad is doing this and their mom is doing that.
And then they wonder why they're lonely. Well, because nobody wants to deal with you because you don't have the customs of sociability. Okay.
Exactly. And you come off as intense and creepy. Sorry, but this is the truth.
Right. It's true. It's the truth. And so anthropologists have really examined this because they're like, how does intimacy and sociability relate to each other? And what can we learn from it? So weak ties and strong ties are what they named these. But, I've got this nephew who's early 20s. I think he's probably going to vote for Trump. I'm really struggling right now with him. And he always gets annoyed when he comes to visit me because I'm very well liked and well known in the neighborhood. I'm a minor celebrity. And it's not because I've done anything amazing. It's because I have the sociability tactics down pat. Now, I was modeled this by my mom. My mom was like the local holy woman. People would come to her house to visit her and like pray, have her pray with them. And wherever she went in the community, it was like a moment of communion. Okay, that was sort of how she approached humans in her world. Was like, this is an opportunity for a sacred moment of Holy Communion, and whatever time and energy you need from me, I'm going to give it to you. So obviously she was beloved. And so that was the model for me. So it's not like I'm doing this, because I've like painstakingly built these skills up on my own. No, these were modeled for me. And I remember when I was a kid, I'd get so annoyed. Like we'd go into a Joann Fabrics and it would turn into like a half an hour deep dive with her and the seamstress, like cutting her cloth because they had to talk about like her daughter's boyfriend who was beating her. And my mom had to like be there for them. And it was just, I was a kid. I was like, can we just buy this yardage and be on our way? Now I really understand. I understand what she was doing to her. That was sort of like her holy work on this earth. I'm not so religious based, but I am very much pro-human, and I'm pro-human dignity and empathy and compassion and kindness. And so if I'm at the checkout with my favorite grocer, I'm going to ask about her sister. I'm going to ask about her heart surgery. I'm going to ask about, is your HVAC system working when we've got these like heat waves that could potentially be deadly? That's simply what I'm going to do. And so whenever we go out, my nephew's like, oh my God, can it ever be simple? And I'm like, well, yeah, if I don't talk to anybody, but these people know me. They care about me. They're happy to see me. To me, it's rude and churlish to turn them away.
Yeah, and I mean, people also probably want to know, like, what is a low-stakes way for me to do this? I mean, the low-stakes way is to just go and chit-chat with someone at Trader Joe's, because I'm telling you, those people are built to be social for nothing. You go there with the intention of just buying some chips or maybe one of those, like, scented candles and come out without anybody paying attention to you, and now you have this whole flirtation going because they make their checkout people extremely attractive for no reason at all. I know strategy. I know what you're up to, Trader Joe's. But you know what I mean? Like, it makes it easier for you to practice these skills. Just use it where you can. Like, I once befriended a whole bunch of people at a Lush, and let me tell you, I had free things shipped from Lush California to where I was out of the country just because I told them I missed some of the products. Okay.
It's so true. I've got buddies at Chipotle now who will just like sometimes they'll just gift me my steak bowl.
They'll give you the guac for free. The guac is extra.
They will. They'll give me, or like they won't charge me for the double steak. They'll be like, "Oh, we won't charge you for it." It's like, "Oh, well, thank you so much." And it's not because I'm doing anything, and I'm not doing, and that's why they give it to you, because they know you're not doing it to get it. You're doing it that way because that's just who you are. And so this idea of like, go to the library, talk to the librarian. When your UPS guy, like for example, it's been really hot here in my area. And so when the UPS or the FedEx guys are dropping stuff off and they like knock on my door to let me know it's delivered, I'm like, would you like some water? Do you need a glass of water? How are you doing? So many times they're so happy for just a simple glass of water. And then we have a little chit chat session and that's it. And guess what? My packages never go missing. So it's like, these are ancillary benefits, but I think the whole idea is that we have got to practice. This is a muscle that we have to build.
Exactly. And I mean, the objective isn't to extract free stuff from people, obviously, but like, people really, really misjudge or, what's the word I'm looking for? Underestimate just how much a nice word can do for other people. We live in a time where everybody is really, really lonely. A lot of people, I just saw this really wholesome thing on the internet about a 90-something-year-old man who befriended like a 20-something, and like he had been there for like a lot of her milestones. I don't know if he passed away or anything. I think he's still around. But like she befriended him when she was in her early 20s, and they were still friends in like her early 30s. And he had just lost his wife, and like he befriended like all of her friends, and he was just like this fun elderly guy that they all used to go and hang out with and like learned a lot from. Of course, vet everybody. Don't just assume that because he's old, he's a sweet little, not crazy person. Like, whenever we give this piece of advice to women, I feel like we also have to say the other end, which is like, just don't go blindly trusting people, obviously. But a lot of my relationships with with people who I've met, like who weren't friends, who were introduced to me by another friend, were people that, I saw every day, while I was walking or while I was doing errands and things like that. And then it just naturally snowballed into building a friendship with them, So I would see them every day and they're like, oh, do you want to come to Martha's birthday? Like, we're going to have her birthday on Lush, and do you want to cut the cake with us and stuff? And like, oh, do you want to go see a movie somewhere? Like it just kind of spiraled into invitations like that, just because I was nice to them.
You know what? You're making me think that maybe the hobby that we all need most is like making friends. Maybe that's the hobby.
Yeah, that should be a full-time job more than a hobby.
Honestly.
And also, this is why people get really icky around the word networking. What is networking besides just making friends? You know what I mean? Part of the job is just befriending people. Yes, of course, people know in a business setting that you probably want something from them, but nobody likes feeling that you're only there for gaining something from them. And this extends to every single relationship you will have in your life. Nobody in your family, your friend groups, your relationships, or your professional connections want to feel like the only reason you're there is to extract labor or money from them. And so you need to learn how to actually have the social skills to be able to offer something of value to people where they're more than eager to give you what you want and willing to go out of their way for you. People are still really confused. Like, people always tell me I'm a very lucky person. They're like, oh, how do you have this luck? And how are people always willing to go out of their way for you? Because there have been lots of situations where they've shared something personal with me and I've been like the friendly ear listening to them and offering them solid advice, or I've done a kindly thing for them, or I've sent them a book their way, or really small acts of kindness, which honestly were inconsequential to me at the time. I didn't even really think much about it. But every single action that I did paid forward in massive ways. Like, I once befriended an elderly Korean woman on a trip to Scotland because she couldn't speak any English and I showed her around. And 8 years later, she bought me tickets to come visit her in Korea and showed me around her town and like took me to like 5 different restaurants. I was so stuffed that entire week. She made me my favorite meal. She took me to a bakery, like all because I took her out one time in Scotland, showed her around when she was feeling vulnerable because she couldn't speak the language. And I never, it's not like I anticipated or wanted this from her. She just did it. I'm not saying do this with the intention of getting stuff back from people, but like it doesn't ever hurt to be nice to people, honestly.
Kindness costs nothing. Kindness is free. And, I think this is something we talked about. Didn't you tell me before? And I was like, oh my gosh, me too. That we both like to send cards, like handwritten notes to people.
Yeah.
And I think this is part of this like older practice of sociability, of socialization. Like it's such a minor thing. It takes me maybe a minute to write off a little note and then to post it. But like you say, the riches that I have been blessed with, my therapist always says, she's like, manna from heaven Rose, I've never seen anybody who gets such manna from heaven. And it's like, I think it's just because I'm nice to people. I'm not doing it with this aim in mind. It's simply, I love human beings. I really feel deeply for us. I think we're all in a really difficult place right now in this earth, in this political time and this point of history. And so it's like, wherever I can be kind, you're damn right I'm going to show up and be kind. And like Diana is saying, the rewards have been unimaginable, and it's not even why I did it. But I think this is the other part of, like, people are lonely, and when they're lonely, they're not realizing how much they're missing out on as far as like the rewards for just being a people person, right? People like people.
Small things matter. I think people really overestimate just how much people think of you differently because you did a tiny thing. Just because I wrote handwritten letters, or just because, when I came to someone's house for a dinner invitation, like my dad always taught me to never cross someone's threshold without bringing something: flowers, chocolates, wine, whatever. These were basic manners.
You never come empty-handed. Yes.
Yeah. Manners maketh man. And, manners basically help women a lot too, and people have forgotten basic manners. And I feel like, I would never go to someone's birthday party without bringing a gift. I don't care if they say don't bring gifts. Like, I will shove it under their pillow and they just have to deal with it later.
Yeah, exactly. I'll hide it when I get there.
Yeah. It's just against my personal, principles to do that. Like, even if they're like, you can't buy me anything, like, I'll be like, well, okay, fine. I found it in my garden or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, how dare you try to change my values?
That's right. Well, listen, I know this is such a fun topic of conversation, and we didn't even get into like horse girls, which was something I wanted to talk about, because like there's a unique vitriol reserved for horse girls. And I think it's because it's a very expensive hobby. And again, men are like, if you're not spending that money on me, it's money misspent. But this is, I think, about where we're going to have to wrap it up. We're coming up to the end of our time. Diana, are there any final thoughts that you'd like to offer?
Scrotes die mad.
Die mad. And we'll talk to you next week. Thanks, everybody.